Welcome to Who Cares, the podcast that embarks on a profound journey into the heart of empathy and indifference in our modern era. Each episode of Who Cares brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests from various industries and walks of life. But Who Cares goes beyond individual stories. We dive into the larger societal and psychological undercurrents that have led to a perceived decline in collective empathy. Who Cares isn't just a podcast. It's a powerful call to action for reigniting the spirit of empathy within each of us. Let's find the answer to who cares together. Welcome to Who Cares. We talk a lot about care in this country, elder care, disability services, home care, but we rarely slow down enough to ask how care is actually being delivered, or what it costs the people doing the caring. Care is often invisible. When it's done well, we barely notice it. When it's done poorly, families feel it immediately, emotionally, physically, sometimes even financially. My guest today understands care not as a concept, but as a lived responsibility, one shaped by family, devotion, workforce realities, and values-driven leadership. Dr. Greg Sanchez has been a caregiver his entire life. He's still caring for his 101-year-old grandmother, and that daily human experience, tending not just to physical needs, but to dignity, connection, and quality of life, informs everything he does professionally. Greg leads a home care organization that grew not by cutting corners or chasing volume, but by centering safety, quality, accountability, and teamwork in a very saturated market. His work happens inside people's homes, inside families, and inside moments that matter. Today we're talking about what person-centered care really means, why training and systems matter just as much as compassion, and what happens when care is built intentionally instead of reactively. Because the question isn't just who needs care, it's who cares enough to do it well. So we'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
And maybe you had already kind of given me some history, but I'd love to hear how you went from Pharma to where you are now.
Yeah, so I really it started with, living with my grandparents early on, kind of always having that sense of connection with the older adult population. Then going into college and grad school, I was actually teaching aerobics back in the 90s, so step and cardio kickboxing and yoga, and I actually took a yoga for senior trainer class and actually took that to my grandmother's senior club, and we're trying to just kind of focusing on basic stretches and things like that. So even during grad school, I was always connected with the older adult population, and then went into pharma. The whole reason behind that was just better living through chemistry. Trying to go ahead and focus in on various disease states, not just on the elder side, but mostly like anti-HIV drugs, so antiretrovirals, things like that, and then went into work, started at Gilead, was there for about 6 years, and then went to Allergan, and that's where I had my commute from hell, which was basically Pasadena to Irvine every day.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed my job, so it was kind of like, okay, can I deal with this? And that's at the point where my husband, who was working for SoCal Edison, was like, okay, you know what, before I get too old, I want to kind of follow my dream of owning my own business. So we decided to go ahead and start looking at different business opportunities, and it was a choice between a Homestead and a Hallmark. So being that most people get their cards now online, and Hallmarks tend to be more for little tchotchkes and stuff. We're like, okay, I think we're probably better suited with home care. We both had a really strong connection with our grandparents, and I think this is something that we could do. So I ended up staying and working, and he quit his job, and actually we purchased the franchise back in November of 2015. And he started operating it, and it was definitely culture shock. And I was just doing, because at that point in time, the state of California actually began to regulate home care as an industry through the the Home Care Services Bureau out of the Department of Social Services. So with my background, I kind of stuck on the regulatory side, ensuring we were compliant, probably going overboard because I was used to working with the FDA versus with the Department of Social Services. And then, and then probably a year into it, he had grown the business and was doing really well. And because he has more of that entrepreneurial flair, I'm more altruistic in what I do. So when I make a commitment to doing something, it's because I have to believe in what I'm doing. And then I think that, kind of just between the seeing how the business was growing, seeing the immediate impact that our care staff was actually creating in people's lives versus being in pharma where you have to wait 10 years before something actually gets approved. And you're kind of watching things through clinical trial and you're like, okay, but the impact isn't greater than that end value for the studies. That's when I was like, okay, you know what? I think it's time. And I'm tired of driving. So let me go ahead and participate. So he actually accepted a position back at Edison, and then I ended up coming in as operational director. And everything he had said was absolutely true. And I'm like, but it was exciting. It was kind of what was, and it was, again, you saw the impact every single day. When you'd have a caregiver call and kind of share, some of the challenges, and then you kind of give them something to try, and then they were like, oh my gosh, it finally worked. And so that was it.
So when I heard you say that, when you were talking about impact, I just saw sparkle in your eye.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what were some of the stories that came out of that?
I think so we get a lot of clients who, individuals who are isolated. And I think that's a big thing within the aging adult population right now. We see isolation being a major driver for bad behaviors, or maybe not eating properly, not going ahead and taking their medications, not being compliant with their medical plan of care, because they're just depressed because no one's engaging them. And I think there were like 3 examples where the family was just, they were all back east, or they all lived somewhere else, and every time they would come visit mom or mom and dad, they would be like, something's not right, and she's not going out. Could be because there was a fall that they didn't know about, and that was one of the situations we had a client who we later found out had fallen multiple times, and she was so afraid to leave her house that she stopped going to her book club, she stopped going to the center, she stopped participating in the things that brought her joy, and it was because she was just scared, and she wasn't telling her family, and they were back east, so it's not like they saw the bruises or anything. So as we were working with her, we finally got her out of the house to the grocery store, and then to the book club, and then back. So all of it, she just needed that little boost of confidence. And I think that's what a lot of folks really need. And that was kind of the positive, and the thing that just kind of like, oh, wow. So we have examples like that. We have examples where we have helicopter moms. Well, now we have helicopter daughters or helicopter sons, because the dynamic has shifted. Now I feel like I'm the parent. I'm seeing that right now. So my grandmother's 100. She's going to be 101.
Oh, my goodness.
In March. My mom has now become the helicopter daughter, really trying to press upon my grandmother, things that she should be doing, or that she feels that she should be doing in order to go ahead and extend and maintain quality of life. And we have to remember that these are older adults. They're adults, period. They have the right to make decisions. My grandmother might be 101, but she is of sound mind. I mean, we can still go through photo albums, and she's pointing at the people in the pictures And it's like, she's still there. Sometimes we'll see a little hiccup.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are, but what we know, and I'm trying to coach my mom as I've coached some of these clients, it's like, your mom is still your mom. Okay? She's not your daughter.
Right.
Yes, there is a need to ensure that she's okay and that we're taking care of her, but you still have to have those boundaries, because all you're going to do is create resentment and frustration and anger, and you're wondering why your mom's snapping at you.
Right.
Well, stop talking to her like she's a 5-year-old. So, and those kinds of circumstances where those kids have that aha moment, it's like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Then, that's kind of one of the things that really brings me joy, because it's like, okay, we've broken the cycle.
Right.
Because it only gets worse if you don't address it. So,
well, I think too, coming from understanding it also and going through it myself currently, I think I could probably be one of those helicopter daughters. And I think though, my stress and concern was seeing a parent not being the way they used to be. And so feeling like I want to push them back into the way they were and the way they are. And so suggesting, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and not addressing my own panic around, he's not the way he used to be anymore. And so I think, what you're saying too is there's not a lot of guidelines on how to do all that. And maybe the business that you're doing, which is incredible, it's not just giving somebody medication or feeding them, but it's very psychological in nature, in helping them do what they can do and maintain some sort of independence or sense of self.
Exactly. And I think that's another kind of driver of what keeps me doing this, is because it's like understanding that we have some very prestigious individuals with some very prestigious backgrounds. We're talking about physicians, scientists, folks who had made a significant impact in society in some cases, or in their families or in their communities. And as they've aged and seen that physical decline, that loss of independence, if they do not address that, then resentment kind of comes in. And that resentment can manifest itself in many ways. And I think that's kind of, to your point about, being the adult child and wanting that older adult to actually kind of be able to be that person they were. We have to attenuate our expectations, because what they're physically capable of doing is not in alignment with what we perceive as what they should be doing. And if we're open to thinking about that, there are still ways to go ahead and allow that aging adult to go ahead and reminisce or experience some of the things that they used to do, but maybe not at the elevated physical capability or capacity that they had done it in the past. So I think those are some of the things that we try to coach our staff on, because we do want to go ahead and really bring that quality of life back. Sometimes it's maybe, if they were avid golfers, it's not so much about getting out there and playing 8 holes, but maybe it's, going to the clubhouse and having lunch while you're watching and reminiscing about some of those great golf games that you had in the past. Maybe it's getting into, if they're able to actually get into one of the club cars and kind of drive around the course and see things and just get back out there. And, if they want to hit a ball at, at a driving range or something like that, then great. But let's not force it to happen. Because there's that aspect of, again, you get frustrated. Imagine if you're a runner and you injure your leg, and trying to get back out there and running is painful. You're going to try to do it, but ultimately it could make things worse. And so that's kind of where we have to kind of gauge
Yeah.
where are your physical capabilities. Now, we're not medical professionals. Home care is really about caregiving and really about ensuring individuals are maintaining the compliance with what their physicians want them to do.
Right.
But we can't make those calls.
Right.
So, the moment someone says, hey, I'm having some pain, we're going to take them to the doctor. We're not going to diagnose.
Sure.
So, but those are some of the things that we kind of want to make sure that people understand. It's like, okay, it's great that you want that person to experience some of the things they did. But what I also realized by you saying that is that we do. I can use my family dynamic for this. There are some family members who are gung-ho about ensuring that my grandmother is having the best quality of life she can possibly have at 100.
Yeah.
And then there are other ones who are distant. And I don't necessarily blame them for that distance, because I think they can't rationalize who that person is now in comparison to who they were in the past.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of self-preservation in that mindset that, I don't want to go down that path because maybe I'm not ready to have that idea that my grandmother is going to die. I haven't I'm not there with the mortality aspect of this. And I think it's that kind of creates rifts that might be unnecessary. But again, that's on the individual if they're not, kind of dealing with that themselves and missing out on some really great opportunities.
Well, I think part of that is that there's always a fear looming. And you see when there's initial decline happening, is this the moment? Is this when it's going to happen? And then the feeling of helplessness, I think, kicks in.
Yeah.
And I think that can be paralyzing on some level.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Just seeing some of our clients, it's like, I've had clients come in at hospice, and we're just supporting hospice, with the expectation that this individual is going to pass within a week or two. And then they surprise us all, and next thing you know, they rebound, and they're there for another year and a half.
Wow.
It's so, and that's where, you have that moment of hopelessness, but there's also that moment of hope that, I think there has to be that balance. You need to understand that, ultimately we're all going to go.
Yes.
It's, but it's really about circling back in and focusing on the quality of life.
Right.
Let's make it as positive as we can within the time frame that we have.
And helping them maintain their dignity as things start to break down for them, I think is really tough.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We see that with, the first time we have to help someone with personal care.
Right.
Helping them, do I really want someone to help me take a bath or, help me, clean myself after I go to the restroom?
Right.
There's just that, ultimately, I think it's funny because it's different in a clinical setting. When you're at a hospital, there's almost an expectation.
Right.
But when you're at home, it's like you're even more vulnerable.
Yes.
And it's really about making sure that the folks that I have working for me understand that you're in a very vulnerable, that senior is in a very vulnerable situation. Yes. You need to acknowledge that. It's not, if you were at a hospital, you might be able to, kind of push through.
Right.
But it's really about taking the time to kind of checking in, cueing what you're doing so that they know and are prepared for it. And then ultimately it becomes a little bit more routine. But even, I wouldn't have thought 40 years ago that I'd be toileting my grandmother, providing her peri-care. She'll even, we try to make light of it, but there's still that, even after doing it for the last 5 years, there's still, that embarrassment.
Sure.
It's like, my God, my grandson's seen me naked and, having to do these things, and when I should be able to do them for myself.
Right.
She keeps telling me she wants to walk. And it's like, okay, I'm just like, all right, we have to, if you want to try, let's start just with basic, muscle exercises. Let's kind of see if you can strengthen, and if you can make one, it's about the progress. And if she can't progress, it's okay. And it's kind of coaching her on those kinds of things. And that's what we do with our clients too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, what do you think is the biggest challenge in getting families to understand about home health care?
I think it's not so much the family as the resistance of the senior who needs the support. I was at a health fair at a park, and I had a 98-year-old man with a walker come up to me and say, "Oh yeah, I know what you do. I don't need that right now." And then just walk on his merry way. And so it's really the family. It depends on, there has to be, I hate to say it, but there have to be a catastrophe that occurs before the senior finally understands. It's like, no, I actually need help.
Right.
So so I think that tends to be one of the biggest challenges. So usually it's the daughter has already recognized it. There's a bunch of scratches on the car. There's some dents. I'm noticing bruising. Mom's favorite vase is broken. What happened there? They're seeing it. They recognize it, but they're afraid to have the conversation with mom or dad, especially dad. Dad, you need some help.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm fine.
Yeah.
So that tends to be it. So the other aspect is really kind of circling back to what we had talked about is, really thinking that, or wishful thinking that their parent, oh no, maybe they're
fine.
They're fine.
Yeah. So kind of collusion with the elder to not do it, and then they end up hurting themselves even more, I would imagine. Yeah. Because once they hurt themselves, it's very hard to come back. It's a long, recovery, unfortunately. And
what's the statistics right now on? So right now, the highest when we look at mortality, it's fall. It's coming from falls. It's the repercussions of a fall.
After a fall, yeah.
So whether it's I broke a hip, and then I'm, then something happens during the course of recovery. So those are some of the things that we have to worry about, and hope that folks are open to having those candid conversations.
Right. Is that kind of what sparked your interest in being a possible death doula?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, it's being able to understand and the perspective of the aging adult or the person who is nearing the end of their life, and then conveying those wishes to the family in a way that enables them to honor what that individual wants. I mean, I still remember my aunt was before she passed, and she had Parkinson's and suffered for many years, but she was adamant, I don't want a funeral. I don't want a funeral. I want, just a simple, blessing. I'm done. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm moving on.
Yeah.
But yet there were family members who were adamant. So it was really about coaching them and saying, hey, it's okay. You can honor her in any way you feel comfortable. But we have to respect the fact that she and her kids and her husband came to terms with this a long time ago. So, and then really kind of getting them on the same page. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll go to church and say a prayer for her, or maybe I'll go plant a tree or a plant in the backyard, and as a token of just kind of remembrance.
Yes.
So we all have what we want, and I think that's kind of why.
Well, you're dealing with a ton of feelings that are coming up, not only for the person that's passing, but also for the people that are not dealing with their own things, right? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's that crazy part is that, that's being human, right? It's just all part of humanity. And, it takes, I'm not there yet, but I think that looking at how death doulas navigate those conversations. For me, it's always been about, do I have the right tools in the toolbox? And I think right now I'm deficient in the tools to navigate those conversations.
So what do you think is drawing you to this?
I'm noticing grief is one of the reasons why I'm doing it. So, obviously in senior care, you have many different types of transitions. The transition of passing away is one of them, but also the transition of, not being able to non-medically support an individual in their home. And they have to subsequently leave their home and go into maybe a skilled nursing or assisted living or something along those lines. So there's the loss of that relationship that our care staff have, and that's a form of grief, right? So they're grieving for that person. We maintain caregiving is hard as a family caregiver, but hard as a professional caregiver, because professional caregivers have to be able to balance that professionalism, but yet still provide that compassion. Compassion will naturally create relationships.
Right.
And as with any relationship that's taken away from someone, you will grieve it. And I think that's why I want to, as I continue my journey in home care, is make sure that I have the tools to support my staff to ensure that they can know that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to for this transition to occur, because really they have no control over it.
Right.
So it's giving them time to breathe, time to accept. And in some cases, we have caregivers who worked with clients for 10 years.
Wow.
And some that have just jumped in onto the team. But, it's really about, in order to gain compliance with a plan of care, you have to build that trust. You have to build that relationship. And whether you're there for 10 years or 10 weeks or 10 days, the only way to achieve the objective of ensuring that those tasks or things are being performed, you have to build that relationship. And the loss of that is going to impact you, depending on who you are.
Well, that's what I realized is what a sacred job it is. It's a very both people, the caregiver and the person being cared for, are extremely vulnerable in the situation, because it pushes you right to the edge, I think, of your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Oh, for sure.
Because the person who's ill or needs the help can be very difficult, angry, nasty, mean.
Oh yeah, all of the above.
Yeah, and then or very in grief, depressed, anxious. It's such a range of emotions that happens. Even during the course of the day. And that how does the caregiver deal with that? Again, I go back to, it's not just feeding and giving meds and cleaning and all that. To me, that's the heart of this kind of work is,
absolutely.
And I would imagine it's exhausting on some level. You have to have some kind of boundaries and some kind of guided self-care and maybe even realizing that you're going through that, because you may not even know that you're undergoing all that, right?
And I think that's one of the things that we were focusing on for 2025. So one of our trainings that we pushed out through our learning management system was really about self-care. We invested in making sure that all the caregivers had that training, that our training coordinator was upskilled to ensure that he could he could have a deeper dive if necessary. And I think that was kind of one approach. Obviously, there's a lot more that we need to be doing to ensure that we're making but I think the fact that we have the caregivers, a caregiver in the home care industry is pretty much, they're on assignment. They're basically at a site. They're not working in a communal or a congregate living setting. So we try to make sure that they have access to case managers, so that way if they do have concerns, or half the time we're telling them during training, call the office. You don't know something, call the office. So that they understand that they have that, even though we're not physically there, they have that network of
Something.
support.
Right.
And if we have to be physically there, we will be physically there. And I think that's kind of the beauty of a well-operated home care organization, is that you understand that, again, you need to create the infrastructure around the support, not just of the client, but of the caregiver, for all the reasons you just went ahead and laid out. And quality organizations will have that. And you can tell the ones that don't. We have a severe shortage of caregivers nationwide, globally.
Right.
I mean, we're at the point now where you have, the statistic is 10,000 people are turning over 65 every single day. You are now seeing the age pyramid shift, where it's no longer the kids on the bottom. It's now, so we don't even have, I wouldn't even call it a pyramid anymore. It's probably a rectangle.
Yeah.
Because you probably have the same number of kids under the age of 13 as you do have people over the age of 70. And really, our society isn't structurally designed for this. And if we don't do something, we're going to be in a world of hurt, because we're going to have a ton of older adults who need help.
Yes.
And the more we can do as an industry to nurture, develop, and focus on the workforce, the more folks will have, available to the, not just the seniors, but individuals with special needs, individuals who need that additional assistance at home. Because if not, we're not going to have it. So we have to make sure that we're addressing those caregiver needs as much as we can.
And I think too, we culturally, we don't have the traditions that they do in some places, where they bring the elder into the home, and it's a place of respect.
Yeah.
Instead, we don't know what to do with our elders, and so we don't deal with it. And so I think that presents its own challenges.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We're even seeing, but even in those culturally, even in those cultures where they venerate their older adults, we are still seeing challenges because the fact that we all have to work.
Right.
And we don't have, we may have that person in the home. I mean, this is the whole conversation about the sandwich generation. You and I are probably in that. You have kids, whether they're young children or, teenagers, and then you have your aging parents.
Right.
I'm like in a triple-decker sandwich, because I've got my grandma, I've got my parents,
Right.
and then, although I'm lucky because I don't have kids, so I mean, I don't have to have that
Right.
aspect of it. But you see families that are struggling with that, and even in those households, they still need some assistance.
Yes.
Because you can't be a good caregiver if you're not caring for yourself.
Right.
And I have that conversation with my mother like every week. Because she does not.
Yes. It's like they forget to, right?
Yeah, what's crazy is that I've seen, we've had great caregivers who've left us because they have gone to take care of their families. And then when I catch up with them, a few months or a year down the line, it's like, come on, you know better than this. You need to still be able to take care of yourself. You need to build in that time, whether it's go to church or go to the gym or go hang out with friends. You need to build that into your lifestyle, because you are going to you cannot give it all, because then what happens when you get sick? Who's going to take care of them when you're sick?
Right, absolutely. So you brought up training of your caregivers. What does that look like?
So we really focus in on just kind of core competencies. So we'll start off with simple things as engagement. How does one engage with this particular population? So many people need to understand that we talked earlier about, before the interview, about where is empathy lost? Empathy's lost because there's just too many distractions in this world right now. Back in the 80s, the distraction was your TV. Now it's no longer it's not your TV, it's your phone. It's, all these different apps you have. So really getting people out of that mindset of, technology is my means to engage, it can accompany it, but it cannot be the sole primary source. We need to come back to having one-on-one interactions, and that's what we try to focus in on within day one. And then going into more, technical skill sets. How does one go ahead and toilet someone? How do they transfer? Your biomechanics are really important. We don't want you to get injured, so how do we go ahead and do that? So we'll focus in on 5 areas which we've identified as critical. First would be transferring and manipulation. So basically, we want to make sure that they're able to safely transfer a senior from a bed to a chair, from a chair to a wheelchair, or just help them up in a safe way. The next one would be toileting and incontinence care. So making sure that you're, providing appropriate peri-care. You're doing that in a way that you're not cross-contaminating.
Right.
Bathing is another one. So hygiene, just overall hygiene. Dementia care. We actually spend an extra couple of hours on the very high-level basics. And when we talk about dementia care and home care, a lot of people think that we're just going to, a diaper needs to be, an adult brief, let me not use the word diaper, an adult brief needs to be changed.
Right.
I'm just going to go in there and do it when that person is severely cognitively impaired.
Right.
That is just a danger zone
Right.
for the person trying to do it and the
Right.
patient.
Right.
So really the goal is redirection, de-escalation. So we focus in on just a few techniques there and then bring them back in to build on those skill sets. So we use curriculum from the Alzheimer's Association, from Teepa Snow, who is an expert in the care of individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's, and their techniques to really kind of ensure that we are addressing the safety concerns, but also just the well-being of both the client and the caregiver. And then the last part is cooking, of all things.
Yeah.
And cooking we kind of lump in with nutrition and hygiene because, again, God knows I put a water bottle in front of Grandma and she will not drink it.
No.
All right, Gramps, come on, let's do it. Do we have to add something to it? So hydration is really important, particularly with all the medications that some of these individuals are on. Ensuring proper nutrition. Diabetes tends to be one of the areas where we see a lot of individuals that have that disease, that we need to making sure that we're bringing in proper nutrition, because simple things like, okay, I got used to just eating frozen meals or junk food. It's like, no, we need to bring in some healthy choices. Now, again, we're not you're an adult, make the good decisions.
Right.
But we're going to try to make sure that if you need protein, we're gonna try to bring that in.
Yeah.
And so really those are the areas, because and cooking, a lot of people are like, really, you're focused on cooking from a safety standpoint? I'm like, absolutely. Do you know how many seniors are eating with GI issues because they're eating expired food because they didn't realize it?
Right.
And what's funny is, and it happens in most homes, once you start seeing shoulder issues or arthritis, whatever it might be, they're stuck on the middle shelf.
Right.
The top
never
shelf
even
and the
thought
bottom
about
shelf are usually where you're going to find the expired goods.
Right.
And if someone just walks in and is like, oh, look, here's some yogurt, and doesn't take a look at it, then you're going to have a lot of issues with stomach problems, diarrhea, and all those fun things.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah.
What's interesting, because you brought up engagement, and I thought that, to me, that's probably one of the most important ones. And I know one of your caregivers taught me a lot about that, being at home one day with her and my father. And, we kind of, because he doesn't hear anything, nothing. You have to yell at him. You have to scream at him. He's got hearing aids, but they don't work. And, but with her, she would include him in every conversation. She would call him by name over and over until she got his attention. And then she would say, what about you? What do you think about that? And I'm thinking to myself, getting frustrated actually, why are we doing this? Because he's not going to hear. It's, and then I saw it unfold. The magic unfolded. And he started, she was asking him quite, like, we were having a kind of a funny conversation about something. And I'm like, he's not going to want to answer that. You know what I mean? And she asked him, and I was like so surprised, and it led him into and he's not a talker. He's just not. He doesn't. He doesn't. He's happy to be in his phone and playing games or doing whatever, or texting or. And he started talking, and which led him to another conversation about his childhood in New York. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And the magic opened. And I'm like, wow, I get it. There is the magic right there. And I mean, she really taught me a lot in that moment. Like, what are we doing? What am I doing? What am I, why am I not, and we forget.
Well, because they're our parents and we don't want to see them. We make assumptions. I do this all the time with my parents. It's like my dad doesn't want to, it's funny. When I was growing up, he didn't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
But yet when we go on vacation now, he is chatty Cathy. I mean, he is as gregarious as a Greg could be. And I'm like, who in the heck are you, man?
Yes.
And it's just, sometimes we have what we experienced as kids or as older adults when we're with them, that it's like, okay, we have these preconceived notions, and where you have someone coming in who's not part of that dynamic, who can actually, if they know how to do it right, can go ahead and tease out that personality that we're not accustomed to seeing on a regular basis.
Well, if that's what they're learning, that's a beautiful thing, and I'm really excited to see that. And and I think that's great that it's going into a lot of households with that, and because realizing it's not just about taking care of needs
and I think that's something that I'm hopeful that we. So right now, the home care, when we look at home care in the U.S., home care is pretty much, it's not a covered benefit by Medicare. You only see it covered in maybe the last 72 hours of life. But, individuals who can afford home care, and home care is not cheap in California. I mean, labor and insurance, workers' comp, and all those things are really driving the prices up. So we're really not seeing this quality of care being equitably distributed to the seniors of California right now, for example. We have, for our Medi-Cal recipients in the state, we do have in-home supportive services through the Department of Social Services that they can get. But, we're talking about maybe a few hours, 20 hours. But there's a discrepancy in the quality of training that I'm offering versus what the minimums of the state are for these individuals. And I think that it's sad. It's sad that we've created we are facilitating inequity. We're not,
absolutely.
So, and I think that where, higher income seniors or seniors who have assets that they can access to support their care are getting these quality experiences. And yet, there are some individuals out there who are getting just tasks, if you're lucky. So there, but
there's clearly an inequity, and I could see that when we first went looking for a convalescent home for him to be in. There was no way. I mean, I think we went to everyone within a 10-mile radius, 15-mile radius, looking. I mean, I can't tell you how many I visited. Nope. I walked out of each one of them. Nope. And it was so painful to walk through those and see people they're not being cared for.
No.
They're just left there to die, basically.
Yeah. Not in the way that we would hope that they would be.
Right.
I'm sure they're getting their basic needs
addressed. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
But really,
like you said, there's no engagement. There's no
focus on quality of life.
I mean, maybe there was a few here and there. There's usually a few good people that, go around and want to connect. But I think for the most part, you don't see it.
No, and that's the sad part. And that kind of is exacerbated by the society that we have that is immediate gratification and distracted with all these other things. It's like, okay, it takes a lot of effort to engage.
It does. But I'm wondering if people could see the like I was talking about earlier, the magic that comes out of engaging with somebody like that, which I think is what has attracted you to this work.
Absolutely.
You know,
I think that's what I kind of all the activities that or the things that we do with our clients are based off of the successes that I've seen. My grandmother might be going on 101, and we can thank genetics for a portion of that, but it's really about her quality of life and what our family has done in conjunction with the care staff that we've brought in to really ensure that she is well taken care of, well engaged, and is just enjoying the best she can.
Right.
And I think that's really something that I hope that a lot of other seniors can have.
Right.
But there's some folks where, oh yeah, I take care of you're not taking care of your grandmother, you're visiting.
Right.
And you need to understand the difference.
Right.
And I think as long as we understand the difference, then we can make some definite change.
Yeah, and they don't understand how to bridge it. They don't understand what they could get from it, I think.
You just hit that. You know what? I think that should be something that we as an industry really focus in on, because it's not about the paycheck. It's about the paycheck plus the that fulfillment you get when it comes full circle, when you actually see and recognize that, oh my God, I just made an impact on this person's life.
The passion. It builds the passion, correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which we know is much more valuable than any paycheck.
Oh yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, is there anything I've left out in this conversation that we...
No, I think we've pretty much touched on a lot of a lot of content there. Yeah. No, I think that I think we've pretty much hit the majority of it. It's just making sure that families understand that it takes preparation and being open with yourself to recognize that just because dad's saying or mom's saying, I don't need help, it's really about you're going to have to continue to come up with different ways of broaching the subject so that ultimately you can get. And there are some companies like mine where we'll do, we'll try to be flexible. So maybe it's just, 1 day a week to start and then kind of go from there. But it's just definitely ask questions. There's tons of resources out there. I think we don't do a good enough job ensuring that families understand what resources are out there until you're literally at the hospital bed getting ready to get discharged.
Right. And you need somebody that night.
Yeah, exactly. So people can reach out to their senior centers. They're a great resource. A lot of the big medical carriers have a social services department that you can reach out and ask questions about, the different resources that are there. Or you can even call companies like mine. I mean, we pretty much are the subject matter experts on anything aging at this point in the San Gabriel Valley. So yeah, we can definitely help with those kinds of conversations, or at least redirect you to where you need to go.
So if somebody was considering on hiring a company like yours, they could call you and say, I just need somebody to come in a couple hours a week just to check on my family member.
Yeah, they could definitely do that.
Or sit with them or,
I mean, or they can go ahead. I mean, we have resources to kind of, so again, depending on an individual's price point, we want to make sure that everyone has the resources. So, definitely consider us. But, there are resources that we can offer individuals on, okay, well, what are some appropriate ways of hiring someone or vetting someone who's not with an agency?
Right.
And I think those are some things that we need to look at. And yeah.
I think there are a lot of horror stories, so there's probably a lot of fear in calling companies that you don't know. And
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
for sure.
yeah.
But no, educating yourself on the right questions to ask.
Right. Which might be questions like,
So, for example, you know, you can ask questions with respect to, have they done this in the past? Are they licensed with the state of California? Do they understand? Do they have some kind of workers' compensation insurance? Or does that family, for their household policy, do they have some kind of rider where they can incorporate, you know, covering a caregiver, just in case something happens while they're on property? So those are some things to talk about. Ask them about their, you know, training. My red flag is always, and I'll give this one as an example, is before my mom considered hiring a home instead to come and help with my grandmother, she was told about this lady at church who helps seniors. So I just kind of sat in the background listening. And she was like, oh, yeah, I've worked with several different seniors. Oh, and I'm like, so I asked her, so have you ever worked with someone with diabetes who was taking insulin? And she's like, oh, yeah, I do that all the time. And it's like, okay. So, and then she had proceeded to say something along the lines on, oh, yeah, I take the same medication. I know exactly what dose I'm supposed to do.
oh, wow.
Now, this woman was 200 pounds heavier than my grandmother. And so I asked her, so what dose do you think she should be taking?
Right.
First of all, she shouldn't, as a non-medical caregiver
Right.
with
Shouldn't
no
be
medical
giving
experience,
advice.
she shouldn't even be asking. But her response was even more frightening, because she was like, oh, yeah, I just give her the same thing I'm doing.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Okay, red flag
Yeah, dumb.
observed. So, yeah, so a lot of folks, you know, hear, oh, I was a nurse in another country. You know, you may have luck there, but, you know, I definitely could provide you with some questions to ask even there, because families need to understand that, you know, ultimately the responsibility of hiring someone privately falls on them. If they are not following California labor laws, they're going to get in a world of hurt. And what we're seeing is, I've had on my social media attorneys reaching out to me because I talk about caregiving all the time.
Right.
So an algorithm picked me up and sent me, learn your rights as a caregiver.
Oh, wow.
So private caregivers are now being, you know, solicited to by these attorneys who are looking for
yes.
individuals who are not paying overtime, or not
Right.
paying the minimum wage, or
Right.
wrongful termination, or whatever it might be. And they're waiting. They're waiting till the senior passes, because they don't
Right.
want to rock the boat, and they don't want to go, and then that whatever they're owed is just compounding over time with the
Oh,
penalties.
wow.
So then they go after the trust.
Right.
And what we've noticed is, from the attorneys that I've talked to, you're seeing an increase in settlements with trusts in 6 figures. So you may not find
Wow.
case law, but there are settlements that are happening on a regular basis where caregivers are, because the family is unaware that they are
Right.
responsible
Right.
for that aspect of it.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, scary stuff.
It is scary.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, you know,
yes.
feel free to call us, and we can definitely help you navigate those
That's
conversations.
good to know. Yes. Good information.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you for everything
Thank
today. I've
you.
really enjoyed this conversation and learning more. And
Well, thank you so much for
Yes.
the opportunity to come and share. And I'm so glad to hear that our staff was able to go ahead and support your dad
yeah,
really
it's
well.
terrific.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that stands out most to me about this conversation is that care, when it's done well, is never accidental. It's built through values, through systems, through training, and through people who are willing to take responsibility for how others are treated when they're most vulnerable. Greg reminds us that quality care isn't just about tasks completed or hours logged. It's about safety, it's about dignity, It's about honoring the humanity of both the person receiving care and the person providing it. So when we ask the question, who cares? Maybe the answer isn't just someone, maybe it's someone who's willing to build something better. To everyone listening, whether you're a caregiver, a family member, a leader, or someone who will one day need care yourself, these systems matter. The values behind them matter. And how we care for others is ultimately a reflection of who we choose to be. Thanks for listening. We'd love to keep this conversation going. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected with us for more conversations like this one.